I think Nalini is about to join. I think she left. She will join. I'll text her. Okay, no problem. Right.
Okay.
So, yes. So, you must be knowing about the governance structure because governance structure is an administrative process. Because whatever the solution are we going to provide, the solution must be confined towards functional and non-functional requirements, what customer is expecting out of it. At the same time, we must be knowing about the policies, procedures, and standards of the organization because the kind of infrastructure which organizations uses, the kind of infrastructure which organizations follow, it is completely depends on the governance structure what they follow because every organization has a governance process on their own. So whatever the rules and regulations, whatever the policies and procedures they were following is something confined to that level. This is where generally governance structure is all about. Is it clear to you, Aishwarya? Right?
This point is actually not very much clear. So can you give me some example, like
Yes.
what comes under governance
See,
structure?
governance structure means the policies and procedures. Let's say, for example, I'll put you this way. Let's say uh, there is a banking client, right? So, for example, a banking client, we are providing solutions for them. Banking client, the organization itself is a CMM level company. Assume
Yes.
that organization is a CMM level organization. So when you talk about CMM level organization, whatever the activities they will be performing within the organizations, at the same time, whatever the solution they were expecting from a particular vendor to develop, everything should fall under a particular standards and procedures.
Okay.
Yes or no? Right or not?
Yeah.
Agreed? Right or not?
Yeah.
So, for example, when you are developing a solution for a customer, you must understand the process of it. What kind of process is this? For example, it's a CMM level organization. Whatever the rules and regulations or the documentation standards they want to maintain, or the kind of infrastructure in terms of the solution, what is that we are going to provide, everything should be on par to the CMM level standards. At the same time, you are not advisable to write the documentation the way you can. Even to write the documentation as well as project documentation or user manuals and all will also have some certain procedures and calculations you need to be followed.
Okay. Got it. Got it.
Clear or not, right? This is
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
generally we need to understand the governance structure is. This is one of the key element which you have to be good with. Clear to you? Understood?
Yes.
Next point, we must be knowing about the principles of software architecture. Of course, this is will be a part of solution architecture when we are working on. We must be knowing about what are the basic principles of software architecture. All these things we are learning in this. Next, we need to follow the guidelines because these guidelines again is depending on the governance structure. What is that we follow? Because whenever we are working on the project, there are some specific guidelines we follow. Again, these guidelines will be categorized into different parts. The first one, guidelines followed by technicality, right? Technical guidelines is one thing. One is technical guidelines. Second is operational guidelines. Just a moment. Right. So the first one is called technical guidelines. First one is called technical guidelines. Second, budgetary level guidelines or financial guidelines, whatever I can say. Third one is called operational guidelines. Fourth one is called regulatory guidelines. Understood? Aishwarya, clear?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So technical guidelines means when you want to develop solution for the customer, As far as enterprise architecture itself is concerned, it is always important for us to know about the infrastructure as well as the technology. What is that are we going to use? And whatever the technology we want to use, the technology must be on par to the solution, whatever you are going to provide. This is where generally technical architecture come into picture. Second one is about budget or financial guidelines. Means whenever we work on the project, there is some X amount of budget will be allocated. Yes, sir. Right?
Yes.
So, being a project manager, of course, being a solution architect, you are never getting to that. But as far as an example itself is concerned, I'm giving this. Who is responsible for the budget to be within the budget? It has to be completed. Project manager has to be taken care of. Am I right or not?
Yes.
Right? So, there will be some guidelines to use proper utilization of budget is also one of the key and prominent element which we must be good and familiar with. But this is point number 2. Point number 3, operational guidelines. Operational guidelines means, let's say we are developing an healthcare application or we are developing an banking or financial applications to the customer. When customer will feel easier as long as the operational efficiency is good, ease of using the system, then customer will be happy. Otherwise, what will happen? How better and what way you have developed, it doesn't have any value unless until there is no operational effectiveness. If you want to make operational effectiveness, you need to follow the operational guidelines. Clear to you, Aishwarya?
Yes.
Next point, regulatory guidelines. Again, these regulatory guidelines again will be connected towards the governance structure, because guidelines mean regulatory standards, policies, procedures, what is that we want to follow. Let's say you want to prepare some documentation and all, there is a standard to follow. For example, if you want to use a software, either it can be a third-party tool also, there are some standards which you have to be followed, which you have to use it. Assume that the customer is saying that there is no open source application to be used, because you never know when this open source application will be paid, will be premium. You never know that, right? As it is a open
Yes.
source application. So what customers always say, customer always say, whatever the application, whatever the softwares are we using, that software must be a licensed software. So when we talk about regularity guidelines and all, one of the key and prominent element is to use whatever the software which must be a licensed software. These are all the regulatory guidelines which being a architect level one has to have. Understood?
Yeah.
Next part is about UML. I think you might have known about it, right? UML diagrams.
Yeah.
There are different diagrams we have, like use case, sequence, collaboration diagrams, right? So activity diagram,
Yeah.
object class diagram, component deployments, right? So different diagrams, because UML diagrams are used for the diagrammatical representation. Because if you want to visualize some requirements and all, how do you do that? Because technically your people are well expertise, but sometimes there will be some complex situations you have to explain. It is always advisable for us to prepare some flow process. Agree or not, right? If you have not shown any flow process, practical view or diagrammatical view of representation, that doesn't have any value. Will you agree on this?
Yeah.
Aishwarya, clear?
Yes.
This is where generally it comes under these UMLs and all. So that knowledge anyway, if you have a knowledge, okay. Otherwise, that will be discussed. That's not an issue, right? That is one thing. Next, we must be knowing about high-level design and low-level design. Now, here is a question to you. How it is different from high-level to low-level? What is your understanding?
High level understanding, what my understanding is, suppose I am doing one application, it will have one UI, it will have one service layer, it will have one DB layer. So so high level means how UI is interacting with like service layer, and how service layer is interacting with DB layer. This could be like high level. And in the low level, we will show every, like, what is the request we are sending from UI to our service, and from service what is the request we are sending for our DB, and what is the response we are getting from our DB, and what is the response which I am getting from my service, and what I'm returning my response to my UI. A complete flow of whatever request response structure and how the flow is, all those things I think will involve low level
Low
design.
level process, right? So high level
Yeah.
and as well as low level idea, as well as low level design knowledge is also one of the key prominent element, which being a architect level, we must be good at, because designings are the basic understanding. This is not something we can comparable with the architect level, because architecture levels are something majorly focused on the high level point of view, means detailed point of view, I mean to say. But when it comes to high level and low level designs are mainly useful for the people who are directly working on the application development in terms of writing code and all that. Clear to you, Aishwarya? Understood?
Yeah.
Next, we must be knowing about different patterns. Of course, we have different architectural patterns, right? So we have different design patterns, solution layer patterns, design patterns, architectural patterns, and all everything. So knowledge over design patterns and as well as architecture patterns is also required. Have you used any design patterns earlier?
I have used Java design patterns, but in architecture design pattern, I think
That's
this,
different. Hmm.
yeah, I think this
Really?
orchestration and event driven, those kind of things maybe are the part of architectural designs
Hmm.
and patterns
Right. So
mainly.
architectural patterns, that detail understanding, we will be discussing on that. At the
But
same
I
time,
am not like very much confident in this. I have just heard name of these.
okay. Because I want to know. End of the day, first of all, I want to know the level of understanding what you have as far as this is concerned, so that how intensely this can be move on. So that will be decided accordingly. Okay. The reason I'm asking this, not in other way. Okay.
Yeah,
Next
yeah, I
about,
understand. Yeah.
yeah, next one about solution layer. What are the different layers, especially in terms of the solution layer itself is concerned? How and what way the solution layers are something useful for us? That also we have to understand. The next we must
Does this solution, one, I have a question here. Does this solution layers mean the same model, object, view, those layers, or DB layer or something different?
solution layers again will be slightly vary, depends on the type of application we are using. For example, if you are working on the cloud applications and all, the layers will be slightly vary. Okay. So whenever we are
Okay.
implementing some on-premise applications and all, layers will be slightly vary. I don't say that there are some major differences you see, because core layer structure,
Mm-hmm.
whatever we follow in regular models of application development remains constant and same. There is no difference in that. But there are some
Mm-hmm.
fundamental differences won't change, Aishwarya. But as far as the high level understanding over the solution layers is concerned, is quietly different from cloud to on premises slightly. So that understanding is required. That's what, anyway, when I'm going to explain that, I'll be explaining about what are the different layers nowadays we have and how it is different from cloud and on premise. That I'll explain there.
Okay.
That you don't need to worry. That is one more thing. Next is about architectural considerations, right? So this is also one of the key and prominent element we need to know, because there are different considerations and as less aspects which has to be taken into an account when we are going to develop architecture for the project. So one must be having a clear understanding over architectural considerations. This is also one of the key and prominent element. And last but not least, we must be knowing about solution architectural development from the perspective of two things, because here, if you remember, I have shown you the differences first. Okay, I have not given any detailed explanation over here. Understand this point.
Yeah.
Because here I just shown you how it is different from cloud to DevOps is what I have explained here. But to have a detailed knowledge over the solution architecture from the cloud and DevOps perspective, so I'll be taking some case study. Of course, some sort of case studies is always advisable for you to understand much better, because I cannot give you different examples for different reasons. Okay, because it leads to confusion to you. So what is that I'm going to take? I'll be taking some case study for you or a project, whatever you can name it. Okay, either it can be of anything. I'll take up some case study or a project. On that project, this implementation level, the perspective of clouds and DevOps environment will be explained to you. So that what will happen when you are working on the real environment, advantage for you is, if someone is asking you that what experience being a solution architect you have, so that whatever the case study or practical understanding over the project, what is that you have undergone the training, by just keeping that into an account and all, you can relate this and you can provide answers to that. So that where it is important, because completely learning about solution architecture on a general context doesn't give you any value, unless until if you have take some case study or some business case. I can say to a simple
Okay.
understanding will be taken some business case. On that business case, this application solution architecture from the cloud and DevOps perspective will be explained to you in coming days.
Okay.
Is it clear? Any questions on
Yeah.
this regard?
No.
Right, so this is what generally the complete agenda about this training about solution architecture. This is what generally the agenda we are going to discuss from tomorrow onwards. So tomorrow we're going to start this different first of all we start with EA, enterprise architecture will start with. So after that we will be going towards cloud DevOps differences, etc. in from tomorrow onwards. Any questions to you, Aishwarya, on this regard?
No.
Are you clear?
Yes.
Right, so we'll meet tomorrow, and tomorrow I'm going to discuss about EA first, because it's always advisable to have a knowledge over EA before it's getting into SA, solution architecture. Again, I'm repeating one more time. As far as
EA.
solution architect itself is concerned, you need not have a detailed understanding over EA. First point to be noted. But why am I explaining this to you? Because as in when you are moving towards architectural roles nowadays recently, it is not directly advisable to have a knowledge over solution architecture unless until we don't have a knowledge over enterprise architecture. So that has to be learned. Then solution architecture, if you are learning, so that it will be a complete package kind of. Otherwise, complete only you are learning this from the solution perspective, but we never know what kind of interview questions we come across when you go for interviews, right? So maybe there are possibilities, because we cannot rule out. There are possibilities. Sometimes they may be asking about business architecture for you. There are possibilities that they may be asking about application architecture or infrastructure level, right? Systems architecture or infrastructure architecture or data level, all that. So if you are knowing about this, it will be more helpful to you when you want to attain your career in the field of solution architecture in coming days.
Okay.
The reason we are learning, okay, underline this point. This is important.
Yeah.
Clear, Aishwarya? Any questions?
Yes. No.
Right. So this is all about today, and we are going to discuss tomorrow. Tomorrow, same time, we connect and we discuss more about EA first. Then we'll get into the next point. And the same meeting ID will be continued further. If there is any changes in the ID, I'll be inform you prior.
Okay.
Clear, Aishwarya? See you then.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.